I used to be the Spider, this city's hero. Always on guard, always ready to swoop in and save the day.
Welcome to Decoding TV's Show of the Week. This week we'll be discussing Spider-Noir, the new series on Amazon Prime. In Spider-Noir, Nicolas Cage plays Ben Reilly, a private investigator who also happens to be a superhero known in 1930s New York City as the Spider. He's assisted by his secretary, Janet Ruiz, played by Karen Rodriguez, and his friend and journalist, Joe Robertson, played by Lamorne Morris, who's also trying to uncover the secrets of the city, such as those of Brendan Gleeson, who plays Silvermane, an Irish mob boss who thinks he runs everything. Meanwhile, when an irresistible mystery comes his way in the form of Lee Jun Lee playing nightclub singer Cat Hardy, Riley must grapple with whether he will become the Spider again. Spider-Noir was developed by Oren Uziel, who has worked on films such as 22 Jump Street and The Lost City. Oren co-runs Spider-Noir with Stephen Lightfoot, who is the showrunner for The Punisher. There are 8 episodes of the show. I've seen 5 episodes. Patrick, how many have you seen?
2.
Patrick's seen 2. We will not spoil anything past the first 2 episodes of Spider-Noir right now. Patrick, what did you think of the show overall?
Would I still be watching this show if Nicolas Cage wasn't in it? And I think the answer to that, honestly, is no.
Wow.
I think Spider-Noir is an interesting swing, stylistically, for Nicolas Cage, accentedly. It's a fascinating swing that 2 episodes in does not really connect for me, other than the indelible Cage of it all. I don't think it's a bad show. It's not a disaster. It's very watchable, and the whole color black and white is an interesting dynamic, but I find it all pretty slow and boring. And the thing about a noir is that it's about a mystery, and I just don't find the mystery as presented early on to be particularly compelling. I've heard the show picks up as it goes along, especially in its back half, but boy, you're putting a lot of faith in nearly hour-long episodes for something more than, isn't it funny to see Nicolas Cage doing old-timey accents and not really a lot of superhero stuff, which can be fine. It's, not everything has to be like people in a suit and swinging around. But then the rest of it's got to be interesting if that's not what we're here for. And so far, that has not been the case for me, tragically. How about yourself?
Wow. I'm a little surprised. I thought you'd be more into the show. I like the show quite a bit, even though I have the same problems as you. I really like Spider-Noir. I think you are right that Nicolas Cage's performance is kind of classic Cage. He is really unhinged. He's doing an interesting accent/voice.
It's not a terrible idea. It's not a good idea, but it's not a terrible idea.
But he's also doing some things that I think only Nicolas Cage can do, right? Nicolas Cage is such a unique actor. The TV series Community had this joke about Nicolas Cage about how somebody who is bad acting and good acting kind of collide and coalesce onto Nicolas Cage's acting style. It's like Schrodinger's acting style. It is both simultaneously bad and good at the same time. And I think that is true. Like half the time you're watching him, you're wondering, is this bad? Is this actually bad what he's doing right now? But in fact, it could also be deemed as really good. And either way, it's always compelling.
Yeah.
So I agree he adds a lot to the show. Okay, here's what I like about Spider-Noir. First of all, we get some pretty huge droughts between Spider-Man content, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Between movies and TV shows, there's pretty significant stretches of time. And so this is one way to get Spider-Man stuff, is to watch Spider-Noir. And if it is at least decently competent, which I think you and I agree, then it does help to scratch that itch. By the way, he's not playing the same character as he was in the Spider-Verse movies, just as FYI. And
there's a fun nod, though. Like the opening line from the show has something to the effect of one time somebody asked me something about
what universe I'm in, and
what universe I'm in,
the only one I've known.
Yeah, which is that's a fun way to nod. Like we get here because of the Spider-Verse films, but this is not that version of Cage's of that Spider-Noir. I really appreciated that as a form of a wink and a nod at the audience.
Well, it's also interesting because, Patrick, we live in times where that's even possible, right? Like you can imagine 20 years ago, right before Marvel, they would have had to had some whole like first of all, 20 years ago before Marvel, this project would have been unthinkable. But they would have had to do everything they could to kind of explain, here's how this fits into the broader universe, or make it like dumb it down and make it as palatable and accessible as possible. Here they're just like, you know what if Spider-Man was a noir detective in the 1930s New York City? Like, and they don't even need to explain it. They just like they know you're going to accept it as the audience. And that's great that people are so seeped in superhero knowledge now that you don't need to do any of that stuff, because then you can focus on the story. So the other thing I really like about the show is I think the chemistry between the actors is great. Like specifically Lamorne Morris and Karen Rodriguez. I think they make for a great trio, and Nicolas Cage has great chemistry with them. And I think that you spend a lot of time with these characters, and I think they're funny, they're witty, and it goes a long way towards making this an enjoyable watch. So overall, I would say it's a recommend. Having said that, I do agree with you that the pacing of the show is not great. And I think you want to be intrigued enough by the central mysteries for that to drive you to watch the show every subsequent episode. And I just don't think the show does a particularly good job of that. There are interesting mysteries and problems to solve as the show goes on, but it's not like there's one central mystery that's super compelling, in my opinion, or if there is one, it isn't presented in a way that makes it super compelling, in my opinion. So
I mean, like the opening mystery is basically, why is he not in the Spider-Man costume,
Right.
or the Spider costume? Like that is, hey, we're watching a show called Spider-Noir, and we know that this person has powers. Why are they just being a detective, like down on their luck, not
Right.
making a lot of money? And I that's what's presented. But even as that being the sort of like the core opening mystery, you don't get a lot of insight. It doesn't really, the show doesn't focus on it very much, and thus it's hindering to set up like a mob subplot.
Right. And I think the mob stuff is fairly uninteresting to me. And there's other stuff that comes up later that is more interesting, and probably is why the stuff that comes up later on in the series is probably why people would tune into a show called Spider-Noir. I'm going to just say vaguely without getting too much into the details. But yeah, I will say not a huge fan of the mystery. Also, I think Nicolas Cage is a little bit too old to play this character. And Nicolas Cage is 62 years old in real life. He's playing a character that I think is about 10 to 15 years younger than that he is in real life. And that shows up in a couple of ways. One is there is a kind of romance subplot between him and Kat Hardy. Lee Jun Lee is a woman who is 20 years younger than Nicolas Cage. And I think it's supposed to come off as very passionate and really sort of you can understand how these people, or one of them, might be drawn to the other and so on. But instead it comes off as a bit leering and creepy, in my opinion, because he's significantly older, and that part just doesn't work for me. Like I don't think those two actors have that much chemistry with each other. So that doesn't work really for me at all. And then uh it's very obvious when they're using a CG Spider-Man, and then they cut to Nicolas Cage, walking, and he's right, and he's just he's not he doesn't move in the same way as the guy who's swinging around, right? And uh, I guess we're spoiled to have like Tom Holland, who's very athletic, and it's like, oh, I can totally buy that that's the same guy. But when you have like, they didn't change really Spider-Man's swinging style. They didn't make it like slow moving and shit like that. And so then when you cut to Nicolas Cage from the CG character, it just is less convincing, in my opinion. So yeah. So this overall, I'm still quite positive on the show, and still think it's worth watching, but I don't feel like the central mysteries are very propulsive, is how I describe it. It's not like they're not interesting or don't have interesting answers. It's just more like the pacing wise, the show feels very loose and very ambling. And as a result, I can totally understand people not wanting to keep going. And also, like, some of these casting issues, without Nicolas Cage, there probably wouldn't be a show, Spider-Noir. And also, there are some downsides of having Nicolas. He's awesome and compelling and makes the show worth watching. And also, there are some downsides to casting a 62-year-old as a Spider-Man who still needs to swing around the city and so on. Okay, Patrick Klepek. Spider-Noir is presented in authentic black and white or true hue full color. And I was shocked to discover that apparently this was not the plan. Like, I assumed, they shot it in color and then carefully calibrated the black and white to be accurate to what they were looking for. But in fact, it does appear as though the plan was for black and white, and then they changed it later on. According to an article in Screen Rant, Spider-Noir crew member Casey Loff posted on Threads some interesting facts about how the series was shot. He said, quote, "I worked on this show as the second unit loader. We shot true noir style on set for a black and white delivery. The sets were all painted green, brown, and pink to complement the gradients of gray and black and white. The color pass was not originally planned and required reshoots for almost a year." Loft's story was backed up by Arsenio J. Alvarez, who served up more info about the film's post-production process. He said, "As somebody who was on the post-production side, yes, the color was an afterthought. We got the deliverables. Then the studio, not Sony, decided they wanted color, so the way to watch it is in noir, black and white, to get the true filmmaker's vision," end quote. So, according to what is described here, they had originally shot it in black and white, and then the studio, which I don't know who they're referring to, but I assume that is Amazon, then said, "Hey guys, this is so good, we want it in color as well." And it's like, well, we can't just switch it to color because they built all the sets and designed them so that they would look good in black and white. You can't just like flick the color switch and then it looks good. So they spent apparently almost a year reshooting it. The estimated budget of this show is apparently around $400 million.
What are we doing?
All that said, Patrick, what did you think of how it looked in black and white or color?
Well, it's actually probably worth even discussing a bit the UI of how it is presented. I think like you watching this through an Apple TV, but I assume that the UI in the Amazon Prime app is pretty similar across platforms. But when you jump into an episode, it asks, do you want to watch it in black and white or color? And if, at least on the Apple TV, if you're hovered over one of those selections, there's sort of a countdown, and then it will jump into the episode based on where the cursor where it's left. But then strangely, every time you jump back into an episode, it asks again, like, "Hey man, I know you're like mid-episode, but like, you want to change like from black and white to color?" I'm like, I don't. So I watched the first episode in black and white, and then wouldn't have even occurred to me to switch it, except that it sounds like they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on the color, and so they would like me to think about watching the color version of it. So I watched, I don't know, a third of the second episode in color just to kind of get a flavor of like how that changes like the tone and the look of the show. I don't think it looks like a bad show in color, but it looks like the show it's supposed to be in black and white. And so my recommendation for others would be, if you're going to watch this show, stick to the black and white version. I think it is the most authentic version of itself. And in some ways, there's a sort of nostalgic or sort of like, there's a weirdness to it that I find myself lingering less on, like, why am I not getting pushed along by the mysteries as much when I'm looking at this like just really unique, aesthetically different show, as opposed to the color version, which looks a little flatter, a little more like a normal show. It's more of a period piece, as opposed to the lighting playing such a prominent role in the look of it all. So the colored version of this looks fine, but I was black and white all the way. And, you know, I'll probably stick with the show just because I'm curious to see how it all plays out. And it's such a unique swing. But I was really not that interested in, other than Amazon forcing it on me, like trying to check out the color version of this show. Where did you end up?
I agree. Basically, the color doesn't look terrible most of the time, but I would say it doesn't look great in my opinion. It somehow makes the show look quote unquote faker to me than the black and white. And I will say the black and white, in my opinion, is strikingly beautiful very often. Like you're watching a scene and it's like, wow, this is clearly designed for black and white. It looks great. It feels like it's lit for black and white. And so I am a fan of the black and white. And apparently people say that is how you should view it. Now, I am really curious about the decision making here. I have no idea how this was decided. My guess is people saw the show and they liked the show. They saw the dailies or they saw the episodes and they were saying, wow, this has the chance to be huge. And also, we don't trust that a black and white show will be huge, because maybe they have data that shows that not all, like most shows that are huge are not black and white, or black and white is hard to sell in some territories, or whatever. There's probably some data that shows that black and white is suboptimal when it comes to getting the most number of viewers.
They're probably right, but they greenlit a show called Spider-Noir. Like, I agree. Like, I think it's going to be a hard sell to like sell this throwback black and white show. But you greenlit a show called Spider-Noir. Like, that's
Yes.
that's
also,
your job,
Patrick,
to sell that version.
I don't know if you know this, but sometimes at a corporation,
Oh, okay.
the left hand may not know what the right hand is doing, or a decision is made, and then later on, the people who made the decision are gone, and then new people have replaced them, and then they're like, hey, let's fix something that the last person did wrong, which in this case apparently was greenlighting a show called Spider-Noir without a color version. I will say that the UI was fairly seamless, right? Like, when you switch from one to the other, it brings you to that exact point in the show. It like loads, it thinks for a little bit, but it brings you to that exact point in the show in black and white or color. It's cool. It's a unique experience that we don't really have for any other show right now. So I will give them props for an interesting experiment, but I feel like the only way this would be really something that would enhance the viewing experience for me is if, like, there was something you could see in one version that you couldn't see in the other, or something. It's like, view the show from this person's perspective, and you switch to that person's perspective, and it's like different than what you would get the original. This is just an aesthetic, like an aesthetic preference. It's not really like, oh, I need to go back and watch it again in color so I make sure I don't miss all the detail. I don't think that's true. So anyway, but still interesting nonetheless. Patrick Klepek, any closing thoughts on Spider-Noir? It sounds like you're going to keep watching even though you don't love the show. What's going on there, Patrick?
Well, it's just I like Spider-Man. It's an interesting take, and so that's sort of enough. You know what I mean? Like, it's an itch that is fun to scratch, and I've got some travel coming up, and it's like, you know what? Like, this would be, I want to see more what they do with it, especially because a lot of the reviews that I did read were like, it gets stronger as it goes along. Its back half, especially once you start getting a little bit to like, how did he get these powers? Is this different than, is the origin story different than the ones that we're used to? Like, I'm curious to see all of that play out. And again, like, Cage is interesting enough, but I've heard the show as itself gets stronger as it goes along. And so again, it's just a very unique looking thing. There is nothing else like Spider-Noir out there. And so that alone is enough to get me going forward.
I will agree with those assessments that you've read. I will say that the Spider-Noir, or the Spider origin story, is discussed and shown in some detail in the show at some point. And I won't reveal like how it happens or how it takes place or how it's shown. But I will say that when I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, wow, this is actually really incredible that they did this. Like, it's really incredible that they go to some amount of trouble to show you how it all happens. And I was like, wow, like, this is really unlike anything I've seen before in terms of the Spider-Man's history. So I was pretty impressed by it. I'm looking forward to hearing from you when you check it out. And I do think there's some possibility that we'll do a bonus episode. By the way, my wife really loves the show, so maybe, like, worst case, I can do a bonus episode with my wife about it. Either way, I think it is something both Patrick and I will finish till the end. So, despite some qualms, recommend it. Spider-Noir, check it out. All 8 episodes are available on Amazon Prime Video. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.